This is Harold. He had a great sense of humor, and he always had a belly laugh going on. I miss him. I miss him a lot. Oh, we both love the outdoors. We go camping. Our plan upon retirement was that we were going to buy a cabin and live out in the woods, the place we both loved. My husband was diagnosed with diabetes, and he rapidly developed congestive heart failure. 5 or 6 years into it, he lost his first leg, a below-the-knee amputation. Then, as he got more and more ill, his second leg developed infection. He was then no longer able to work. He wasn't able to care for himself, shower himself, and that became my responsibility. God showed me himself. He was always there, even in my darkest hour. I can remember when we were getting down towards the end of his life, when everything was so difficult to care for him. He was falling all the time. I was calling the paramedics, and they had to come pick him up off the floor. And remembering standing in my kitchen crying, God, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And I believe when I stood in the kitchen that day, and the paramedics the next day said, you need to put him someplace where they can care for him, that was God talking through that paramedic, that I'm giving you the answer. You need to get him specialized care. We knew that it was coming to the end. He called me one day, and I was sitting in my office, and he said, am I dying? I said, yes, but you won't be alone. God is in control, Harold. He's promised us that he'll take us through the valley of the shadow of death. It was almost my last conversation with him where he could actually express himself. The last year was the most difficult time because he could no longer make his own decisions. And I can remember the last stay in the hospital. The doctor came to me and he said, you need to make a decision as to whether or not we continue trying to treat him, or whether or not you determine that now is the time to let him go into hospice and enjoy the last few days of his life. I explained that we're Christians, and we knew God was going to be in control. When he died, there was such peace on his face. It was tremendous. He had been in a coma, and he opened his eyes, and he looked off into the distance, and you could see joy in his face as he was looking heavenward. I know he could see Jesus. Then he closed his eyes, and he was gone, and I know that he was ushered into heaven at that moment. I know it was a relief to him physically. I know it was a relief spiritually because he stood in the presence of his king. But for me, it was also the woulda, coulda, shouldas. Did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right thing? And in the end, I remember having a dream and feeling the presence of Harold saying to me, it's okay. I'm happy. And I don't know if that dream was just me wanting that answer, but I do feel God speaks in many different ways. And I do believe that in the end, it was all about heaven. It was all about heaven. And so I say to God periodically, you know, God, I still have a dream of a cabin in the woods. And I don't mind if I don't get a mansion, but I'll take a cabin when I get to heaven. Through all of the events of my life, God has blessed and used and grown and developed me. I cannot help but believe that God is the author and perfecter of all I am. In Christ Jesus, I have the hope of the resurrection. I have the hope of seeing my husband in heaven again. I have hope that God will bring good things into my life because I know He plans for me. So I know I would be hopeless without Christ.